Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we're gonna start with our we're gonna start with the 99 names of Allah again. We're gonna cover 5 names today, inshallah ta'ala. And since we didn't cover last time, I was not available. 99 names of Allah again. Yep. I can hear the voice. That's good. Just confirming that. So we're gonna do 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala today. Inshallah ta'ala, and we're going to cover 5 more names of him. So let's see if this is centered. Yeah, right. Yep, so Assalamu alaikum everyone, and we're going to cover 5 more names from Imam al-Ghazali's Al-Maqsad al-Asna fi Shar al-Asma al-Husna, which is his shar on the 99 names of Allah. This is not part 2 actually. I think this is part 3, right? Yeah, this is part 3. So before we begin, we're gonna cover 5 names. 3 of them Imam al-Ghazali covers by himself, meaning he covers them together. We're gonna do that as well, but we're gonna give the counsel for them, so meaning how we relate to them separately, as he does. And so without further ado, I guess we're gonna start, right? So yep, just give me a moment. Let's go up and let's go to full screen. And yeah, so to reiterate, this is going to be our 3rd session on Imam al-Ghazali's Al-Maqsad al-Asna. The last time I believe we left off at Al-Jabar. Yes, we left off at Al-Jabar, and this time we're going to start off or pick up on which was the name that we're going to start with? Not Al-Muhaymin. We have done Al-Muhaymin. Al-Mutakabbir, yes, the proud. So that's the first name that we're going to cover today. So let's get right to it, inshallah ta'ala. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد. So, Al-Mutakabbir means the proud. So, we're going to first give Imam al-Ghazali's meaning and we're going to expound upon it. So, all of these are direct quotations by Imam al-Ghazali. So, I will give the direct quotations and then I will expand on what he says. So, if you guys have been over here previously as well, you already know how this goes. So let's start, inshallah. So the proud is one who regards everything as unworthy of consideration in relation to himself, who sees greatness and majesty only in regard to himself and looks upon others as a king looks upon his servants. And in his assessment, be correct, he will truly be proud. And the one with this assessment will truly be proud. Moreover, that is absolutely inconceivable of anyone but God, great and glorious. So what Imam al-Ghazali is saying is that the person who is proud or who deserves to be called al-Mutakabbir, the proud, is one whose greatness and majesty is so much that he does not regard anything apart from himself. So he looks down upon everybody because that is the only relationship with others that he can have. And this is inconceivable for anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So meaning that this name cannot be applied to anyone other than Allah. It is literal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With others, it is completely and utterly metaphorical. So the reason that it is metaphorical with others is because we do not own anything. We are baseness. So as Imam al-Ghazali explains, and I will actually go a bit further than what he gives as an explanation, because Imam al-Ghazali talks about pride a lot. So he has an entire book. So you should be able to see it behind over here. Actually, it's in my room because I've been reading it currently. So the book is called Dam al-Kibar wal-Ujab. So the book of the condemnation of pride and self-admiration. So he has an entire book on this. So the point is that in terms of man, it does not befit him to be prideful because he is the lowliest of the low. So the meaning of this is that in his very essence, he is non-existence. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that brings things into existence and he annihilates them or he sustains them continuously throughout the moments. So this is known as occasionalism, but even if we forget about occasionalism over here, even though that's the proper explanation of this, but even apart from occasionalism, the point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who exists by virtue of himself. So he requires absolutely nothing apart from himself in order for him to exist and continue to exist. In terms of humanity, we require Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to exist because by our very essence, we are non-existence. So meaning that we cannot bring ourselves into existence, nor can we sustain our existence. So our default state, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings us into existence, is non-existence. So the point over here in relation to this name is that how is it possible for a man to be prideful when he in his very essence is non-existence? So meaning he's nothing, right? So how can something that is nothing be prideful over being nothing? So is he being prideful over the fact that he is nothing? In essence, that is what is being talked about over here. So in that sense, it is completely and utterly impossible and inconceivable for a person to be prideful, and being proud is something that is only belongs to God. So there are many ahadith. Imam Ghazali doesn't mention them because they're already known, and because he already, as I said, he already has like countless, let's say, elucidations on this particular topic. And so, what the Imam says over here is that. Sorry, not the Imam, the reports on this. There's a report from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that pride is my garment. So what that means is that it is mine, right? It is nobody else's. No one else can claim pride because it is my garment, right? So anyone who competes, and the hadith actually goes on to say this, and I'm paraphrasing, so these are not the exact words, but anyone who competes with me in this will be destroyed. So no one can compete with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of pride, because no one apart from him can be prideful. It is his garment, it is his alone. There's in terms of the first sentence that Imam al-Ghazali says, the proud is one who regards everything as unworthy. So now the question arises, do we have reports in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does treat the world as nothing? So actually we do. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the companions that, do you see this fly, this, I believe it was a mosquito. So do you see this mosquito? The worth that you have, so the worth that a mosquito has in your eyes, one wing of it, so not the entire mosquito, just one wing of it. The world, in terms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has even less worth in his eyes than this. So when we see one wing of a mosquito, the amount of worth that we place in it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places even less worth in the dunya. So the dunya over here means everything. So not only the world as in the dunya, but everything. So nothing, so he looks down upon everything completely and utterly, right? So that's the meaning of someone being prideful, right? So he looks down upon something. So the way that Imam Ghazali explains this in Dam al-Kibar wal-Ujab is that being prideful means that one assigns oneself a rank and he assigns another person a rank. But the other person, the rank that he assigns to another person is lower than himself. So that is the meaning of pride. That is literally what pride is. So obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need to assign ranks because we are in no approximation to him. So he only assigns himself a rank, which is the only rank that can be ascribed to him, and we have no rank whatsoever, right? So by definition, he is the only one that is absolutely proud, meaning everything is below him. So the way that this applies to us in terms of the counsel, so what can we take from this name? How can we relate to it? The counsel that Imam al-Ghazali says is that the proud amongst men is the knower skilled in renunciation. So over here, renunciation is zuhd, so detachment from the world. That is what the Imam is talking about. The meaning of the knower's renunciation lies in freeing himself from whatever would distract his heart from the truth, and in disdaining everything but the truth. May he be praised and exalted. Thus despising both this world and the next, while removing himself from whatever in either one of them could distract him from the truth most high. So one of the things that you will notice over here is that Imam al-Ghazali is not only talking about renunciation of the world, he's talking about renunciation of the next world. So what does that mean? So are we supposed to renounce Jannah now? Are we supposed to renounce paradise now? Well, in a sense, of course, we have to, because if we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we love him more than we love paradise, right? So if we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for loving, because he will give us paradise, then this is not love of Allah, this is love of paradise, this is love of things. So imagine your father promises you a gift. So if you love your father for the gift, then you're not loving your father, right? So you're loving the gift. So it is or what we call it is not the default state. This is not what love is. So over here in renouncing everything apart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala includes renouncing paradise. So renouncing over here does not mean that you do not want paradise. You do want it because paradise signifies that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with you, right? So the proof of this belief of Imam al-Ghazali is actually in the Quran itself. So on the day of judgment, after the people of paradise have been given paradise, what will occur is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to them, shall I give you something better? Shall I give you something better? So they will say, what's better than this, my Lord? And Allah will say that I will never be displeased with you again. So this is better, that Allah will never be displeased with you again. So Allah's happiness or Allah's acceptance of you is leveled beyond paradise itself in the Quran, right? So that is exactly what Imam Ghazali is saying, that loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seeking his pleasure is valued more than paradise. So for example, let us say that paradise was put at the left and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure was put at the right, and let's say they are mutually exclusive. So you would have to seek Allah's pleasure beyond paradise. So you would have to reject paradise and seek Allah's pleasure. So that is what the Imam is talking about over here, that you remove everything from your heart apart from Al-Haq, apart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything else is irrelevant to you. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's happiness entails that he gives us paradise, then we love paradise. But if it doesn't entail it, then we don't love it. Now, obviously, it does entail it, and so therefore we love it. So this is what the meaning is for a person to understand what it means to be proud, meaning that his knowledge is not of anything other than the proud, than the al-mutakabbir. That's the meaning that a person is supposed to take from the word. So the next is al-Khaliq, which means the creator, al-Bari, which means the producer, and al-Musawwir, which means the fashioner. So all three of these relate to similar things, but they're not synonymous terms. So we will explain what that means. But the reason that all three of them are covered is because they relate to the act of creation, right? So an act of creation requires the creator, it requires the producer, it requires the fashioner. Also the planner, which is also what Imam al-Ghazali talks about here. But the planner is also related to this, but since we are covering them in linear order, so these are the three that we're covering right now. And the planner has something other than the act of creation itself. So planning requires an act of creation requires that it be planned, right? Or it maybe happen spontaneously, but it requires that it is planned. But someone can plan something and not do it, right? So it's not that it is only joined with this. So therefore, Imam Ghazali doesn't cover it over here. But so he says, everything which comes forth from nothing to existence needs first of all to be planned, secondly to be originated according to the plan, and third to be formed after being originated. God, may he be praised and exalted, is created Khaliq in so much as he is the planner, Muqaddar, producer, Bari, in so much as he initiates existence, and fashioner, Musawwir, in so much as he arranges the forms of things invented in the finest of ways. So Khaliq means in so much as he is the creator. So he is the one who creates. Producer is the one that he produces. He initiates the creation from non-existence. So he initiates the existence of ourselves and everything from non-existence. So he's the producer, meaning he brings things out of nothing. There is no previous material. There is nothing whatsoever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates from nothing, right? So he's the producer, literally. He produces out of nothing, right? And creator is that he is the one who produces. So he is the one who is al-Khaliq. And one of the things about creator is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names do not have partners. Allah does not have partners. He's the only creator. There's no such thing as another creator. So one of the evidences from like the scriptural sense of occasionalism is this, that Allah is Khaliq. So since Allah is Khaliq, there can be no one else who is a creator. It's impossible, right? And so if we say that man creates his things are created, or people create things, then we in an absolute sense, obviously we can say it metaphorically, but when we say it in an absolute sense, then we are saying people are also Khaliq, right? And then we are making partners with Allah. But that's a topic for another day. But this is just to tell you that this is also linked over here from a theological perspective. So now fashioning means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fashions it in its finest, minutest, and best of details. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the camels, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions man, so he says that we have made you in the best of forms, right? He says this regarding us in the Quran. So the one who makes us in the best of forms is the fashioner. He fashions us, right? So he even uses this, that we fashioned you, right? In the womb, outside of the womb, and everything on earth. So now talks about, like, it seems to some people, so some people did argue this, that these are the same things. So these three names are the same thing. Now, Imam al-Ghazali disagrees with this, and he says all three of them have different meanings. So I've already elucidated this on this a bit, but since Imam al-Ghazali elucidates on it more than this, So I will do the same. And so Imam al-Ghazali says that man requires to be made from an appropriate substance. So what he does is that he gives two examples. So this is the second example that he gives. Since it relates to us, so I decided to cover this one rather than the other, but I'll still give like a small brief into the first example he gives. So the first example he gives is the making of a building. So in order for a building to be made, there must be someone who plans the building. So he plans how the building should be, when it should be made, where it should be made, right? So these are all of the things that he does the planning of. So the planning of the building. Then there's the one who produces it, right? So the one who provides all of the material in order for it to be made is the one who produces it. Then is the one who fashions it, which is the architect. Well, no, he's not the fashioner, but so the creator, actually, we talked about the producer. So the creator is the architect. So the architect is the one who realizes the creation, and he realizes that it is going to be in this way or that way or the other, right? So he gives the design for it. Then is the fourth person who actually lays the brick, who actually goes through the intricacies, who goes through the paintings, who goes through the paints and all of the different things that are related to making a building. And this person who does this is the fashioner. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are not two beings that are doing other things, right? Allah is doing all of them. So he's all of them, but they have different meanings, right? So the second example he gives is which is the one that you find on your screens, which is that man requires to be made from an appropriate substance, which is fire, fired clay like pottery. So man is not made from like just normal clay. So the example of man's clay is that of pottery. So the clay of pottery is fired, so it is burned in essence, in order for it to have a good consistency, and in order for it to remain, let's say, in shape after it has been molded. He then requires appropriate amounts of water and dirt, not more or little. So, in order for us to make clay, we can't have a lot of water and soap and very little dirt, nor can we have a lot of dirt and very little water. So, it has to be proportioned properly, right? So, this is referring to the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has to be proportioned appropriately. Now, all this resolves to planning, and he is a creator by virtue of planning these things, fashioner by virtue of originating according to the planning, and producer by virtue of sheer origination in one thing and origination according to plan in another. He is the fashioner because he forms them in the finest of ways. So you can see in the creation of man, all four of these, all three of these names are involved from the beginning to the end. So another name that is involved over here is the Muqaddar, which is the planner. So, but that's we will cover that name later on, as Imam al-Ghazali covers that later on. But all three of these names, as Imam al-Ghazali has explained over here, and as we explained in the previous example of the building, all three of the names are involved in any act of creation. Since they relate to the act of creation, all three of them are involved, but they have different meanings relating to the different aspects of the act of creation. So now comes the counsel. So how can we relate to these three names? So we are neither Khalik, as we previously talked about, that it is impossible for man to be Khalik, right? So how can we relate to these names when he can't even have any grasp of them? And if to say that we are Khalik is, let's say, blasphemy, so then how can we understand these names? So the counsel that Imam al-Ghazali gives is that man's share in this name lies in acquiring in his soul the form of existence of each thing with respect to its disposition and arrangement until he comprehends the organization of the universe, and then turning his gaze into the minutest of details until he grasps in part and whole. So the point over here is that man's share in the name lies in him understanding how the creation has been made. So he looks towards the universe in the grand scheme of things, and then he looks towards it in the minutest of details. So that he realizes it and he knows it in both general, so in grand terms, and he also knows it in details, in the minutest of terms. So this goes from understanding the universe as a whole, then understanding the ant, then understanding the organs of the ant, then understanding the atom itself, and then going beyond wherever this takes us, right? So the atom that Imam al-Ghazali talks about is actually the indivisible particle. So that is not referring to the scientific atom, but since we are just explaining this, so to the minutest of details, no matter how down that goes, right? So you look at it from up, down, and down, up. Big, small, big, right? So that's the point, that you need to spend your time in knowing the universe, knowing everything around you. Because then all of them are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do this all throughout the Quran, right? So do they not see how the mountains are erected? Do they not see how the camels are made? Right? Do they not see amongst themselves, meaning inside of them? Do they not see in the universe? So we are told to look into all of these things because it brings out our perfection as far as man can be perfect in whatever metaphorical sense, is that his perfection is dependent upon him realizing what is in front of him, right, which is the world, and which is its grandeur and in its minutest details. So the second is, in terms of the name fashioner, then a person understands this name by acquisition of the cognitive from corresponding to the existential form, for knowledge consists in a form in the soul corresponding to the thing known. So over here, what Imam al-Ghazali is talking about is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has fashioned his very soul, his very thoughts, his very ideas, everything that he knows. How does it come about? What is his soul? Who is he? So this is to realize the perfect form that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made him internally. So one is the outer form, right? The hands, the cap, the eyes, everything. This is the outer form. So this is not really who we are, right? So my hand cuts off. I am not dead, or it's not me, right? It is just a tool. So it's almost like a car. So I'm the driver, and all of these things are my tools, right? So they function, they have functionings, and let's say if one of them is cut off, then let's say the wires don't go there. So it's a very close analogy. So since we're not talking about the soul, I will not give it. But that's how Imam Ghazali conceives of the soul anyway. So it is in regards to that we must know how we are fashioned, how we are from the best of forms. So as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we made you in the best of forms. So what does that mean? How are we in the best of forms? In order for us to understand that, we must look inwardly, because outwardly, like, this hand is nothing special. Like, obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it, and it's beautiful, and in its minutest of detail, the whole, it's very beautiful, right? But a hand is also possessed by an ape. It is also possessed in a different form by an ant. It is also possessed in a different form by all of the animals. Especially the hand in of itself is not something that differentiates me from anything else. So how can it be from the best of forms when the best of forms must refer to my inner, my soul, how I perceive, how I know. So that is what it is referring to. So, anyways, moving forward, the last one is the concerning the creator Al Khaliq and the producer Al Bari. Man has no access to these names either, except by a sort of remote method. Wait, did I just go offline? Um, can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, let me know, because it said to me on the laptop that I've gone offline. So it seems like I'm online right now. So if you guys can just tell me if you can hear me, so then I'll continue, because I just got like a pop-up that you're offline. I don't know what that's about, but still, yeah. If you guys can hear me, and if this is the stream is still working, then let me know. I'll continue, inshallah. Oh, wait, let me see in the phone, but even on my phone, it's not showing. So there must be something that's going on. Is the Can you guys hear me? Just let me know. Can you guys hear me? Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My brother said salam, so that I return the salam. Okay, which net am I using? Yeah, so this one works. This net should never have an issue. Can you guys hear me? Guys, please, come on. Let me know if you can hear me. It's not hard to do so. Can you guys hear me? Please let me know. Guys, come on. Let me know, please. Can you hear me? Write a comment in the live chat. If you don't and you can't hear me, then I'm just going to continue then, since you're not replying. Two people in the chat, please let me know if you can hear me. Okay, let's see. Is this working? Is this working? Okay, it seems like I am online. Yep, it does seem like I am online, yes. So we're gonna continue anyways. So what Imam al-Ghazali is talking about over here in particular is that the origination based of power. So he says that there are three things are divided into three things. So things that we have power over, things which we have no power over, and things which we can only know. Right? I believe that's the third one. I'm not sure about the third, but two of these are the most relevant. So the things that we have no power over, the best thing for us to do with them is to acquire knowledge of them. And if we cannot acquire knowledge of them, then to accept them as they are. And the second is the things that we do have power over, then we are supposed to bring them to their finest forms, doing them justice and operating on them by their wisdom. So everything has a proper place. Now, this proper place may be known through religion, it may be known through reason, it may be known through, let's say, a spiritual attainment. But whatever that proper place is, our job is to ensure that that thing reaches its proper place. So that way we can understand these names better, right? So this is the counsel for these three names. So all three of them are covered by Imam al-Ghazali in one go. And so we did that as well. So wait, let me put the full screen on. Right. So now we're going to move on. The last name that we're going to cover is Al-Ghafar. So Al-Ghafar means he who is full of forgiveness. So he who is full of forgiveness is the one who makes manifest what is beautiful and conceals what is ugly. Sins are among the ugly things that he conceals by letting a cover fall over them in this world and refraining from requiting them in the next. So forgiving is concealing. So now this concealing is divided into three different ways. So the first is the physical filth. So we have filth in our ears, we have filth in our noses, we have filth in different parts of our body, under our nails. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us in such a beautiful way that all of these things are covered which have filth. Right? So our ears are covered by the earlobes. So the filth within the ear is mostly never seen. Our noses are covered by the way that they are constructed, right? And so the filth within the nose is not seen. The filth between our bodies is not seen. The filth between our nails is not seen. So this is part of him being Al-Ghafar, that he covers all of our sins. So not all of our filths. So our literal physical filths are covered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This also includes that he allows us to go to the washroom, for example, without us being seen. Right? When we are naked, we do not see. Clothing itself is a form of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiving us. For He's concealing that which is filthy in us. Okay? And then the second comes, this is inner filth. So if you have hasad against anyone, as long as this thing is not made clear to the other person, then it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's concealing it from the other person. There's absolute gem of a hadith on this by Ali radiallahu an, in which Ali radiallahu an says, which is the fourth caliph, obviously Khulafa Rashidin. So Ali radiallahu an says that if the veil was lifted, meaning the concealing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing, were it to be lifted, then you would refuse to bury the dead. You would refuse to bury the dead. Meaning that if people were to know your inner states, if they were to know your wildest imaginations, if they were to know what you conceive of and the filth that you have inside, then they would refuse to bury you because you're so filthy. Right? So it is a profound mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a profound forgiving from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that our inner states are never disclosed to others. So we are prideful, for example. We have bad thoughts, for example. We wish bad for another individual, right? We say things against them in our hearts. So these are things that are natural, right? It occurs to us, and we are forgiven for them as long as we do not bring them out and act upon them. But what if these things were disclosed, right? There would be no friendship anymore, right? There would be no love. There would be nothing anymore, because we never always think good of others, and our qualities are never perfect inside us, right? And so, therefore, this is a great mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He conceals all of these things from others. So, this is in regards to inner filth. Then the third is in regards to the sins that we actually do. So, now the concealing over here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not allow people to exact that which is appropriate for us. Meaning that if we do a sin in the world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covers it up. People forget it, people overlook it, people do this, people do that. This happens all the time. We do a mistake, right? No one notices, we move on. And if we have done it, it is also haram to just tell of it, unless obviously we have harmed someone or we have taken money and stuff like that. But apart from that, if we do a sin in front of people and people don't realize it, then we shouldn't tell it, because we are not supposed to expose our sins, right? And so it is not Allah subhanahu, it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that covers that up. Otherwise, people would know, and people would take retribution from us for what we have done. And them not taking this retribution and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala concealing that sin is one of the forgivenesses that He has given us. So this relates to the name Al-Ghafar, right? Now, the counsel of man in this is that man's share in this name lies in concealing concerning others what should be concealed regarding himself. So this goes back to a maxim that you will see throughout Islam, which is that a person conceals for other what he conceals for himself. He wishes for other what he wishes for himself. He gets for other what he gets for himself. So he should treat his brother as himself. So let's say there's a person who did a sin. Now, if I am to disclose it, first I should answer the question that if that individual was me, would I want for that sin to be exposed? If I wouldn't, then I shouldn't expose it for another person, right? So I should do to him what I would have done to myself. So if I would have liked that something be concealed about me, I would like that it be concealed about it be concealed regarding someone else. That is how we are supposed to approach it. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever has concealed the weak spots of one of the faithful, God great and glorious conceals his weak spots on the day of resurrection." So if you conceal the weak spots, this can be sins, this can be other things of another believer, then on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will conceal your faults. Right? The slanderer, the praying person, and the one who repays evil with evil are cut off from this attribute. Right? So the people who do these things, so who slander, who pry on individuals, and who repay evil with evil. Someone did evil to you, you do evil to him. They have nothing to do with this attribute. They are not individuals who can say that they are people who have concealed other people's sin. Right? So this is actually one of the most basic courtesies that we owe other Muslims, that we conceal their sins, that we hide their faults, right? Because that is a form of mercy. It doesn't only relate to these names. So it's just a general form of mercy. It's a haq that Muslims have over us, that we do not show their faults. We do not expose them, right? This does not mean that we do not forbid the evil. Of course we do. But this is in regards to concealing people's sins or people's weak spots, as the Prophet ﷺ says over here, right? This all goes back to the maxim that we should do with our brother what we do with our own self, right? So if we would like that our sins are not exposed, then we would not expose the sins of others. So we wish for our brother what we wish for ourselves. So these are the 5 names. This is actually part 3. I didn't realize I just said part 2. So we have covered, alhamdulillah, 15 names of Allah so far. And next time we will cover 5 more. But these are the 5 names that we covered today. So the fashioner, the producer, the creator, the one who forgives by concealing. And the first name that we covered was, what was the first name that we covered? You know, my memory is so bad. I just covered it like 15 minutes ago and I forgot. Yeah, Al-Mutakabbir, the proud. So these are the names that we have covered today. Inshallah, next week we will go to Arba'in fi Usuluddin. We will return to Arba'in fi Usuluddin. And when we return to Arba'in fi Usuluddin, I believe this time, the last time we did charity. No, we did prayer. And this time we're going to do charity, something like this, right? So the last time we maybe fasting, right? Since perhaps we should do Imam Ghazali's chapter on fasting next time, since Ramadan is coming. So we ought to do fasting next time. And yeah, I believe we will do fasting. So next Thursday, we would cover Imam al-Ghazali's chapter on fasting in Arba'in fi Usuluddin, inshallah. So, and then we will return obviously to Al-Maqsad al-Asna the week after it. So that concludes the 5 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we covered today. There's some elucidations on them. So if you guys have any questions, do go ahead, inshallah ta'ala, so that I can answer them and then we can end the stream. I was thinking perhaps after I do a documentary, I can do a stream in which I explain the sources, I explain the books that I've used. So I did a documentary on Shams Tabrizi, and so perhaps what we can do is we can discuss his ideas in a live stream, and we can talk about his ideas, the sources that I used, my own opinions on his ideas, because like obviously in the documentary I do not give my own opinions. So and we can do a live stream after every documentary I do, and perhaps we can dive a bit deeper into the ideas in a live stream, and people who have questions can ask those questions, and I can answer those questions, or we can try to answer them together, right? So that is something that we can do with the documentaries that I do. But anyways, that's a separate topic. But in terms of this live stream on the 5 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we covered, so if you guys have any questions, let me know, inshallah ta'ala, and I'll answer them. But if you have no questions, then I would be taking my leave, inshallah. So do let me know. I've had my tea over here for such a long time, which I didn't drink. So let me know, inshallah ta'ala, if you guys have any questions. If you have no questions, then mashallah, I'm such a great explainer every single time that people have no questions. I'm gonna wait a minute. If you guys have any questions, you can ask them, or you can just see me drink some tea. Okay, seems like there are no questions. So next time, inshallah, on a Thursday, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna cover Imam Al-Ghazali's chapter on fasting, since Ramadan is starting. And Assalamu alaikum. Oh, mashallah. Okay. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, which book of Imam al-Ghazali would I recommend you start with? Okay, that's a good question. Okay, give me a moment. I need to sort out my library as well. So there's a lot of books over here. So this is my section on Imam al-Ghazali. So the book of Imam al-Ghazali that I would recommend you begin with. So I usually recommend a person begin with Ayyuh al-Walad. Wait. So I have Ayyuh al-Walad over here. My God, I need to sort out these books. Here it is, yes. So I usually recommend that a person, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I recommend that a person starts with this. So Ayyuh al-Walad. So it's my beloved son. So it's a very basic introduction into what it means to be a good Muslim. So what I'll do is that I'll cover one of, so it has, I believe, like some 30 councils. Wait, 30 or maybe 20 councils, something like this. I haven't looked at any so it has in essence, yeah, 20 councils, no, 21, 22. I am wrong. Yeah, 24 councils. So I was right roundabout, so I said 20 or 30, so it was in the middle. Yeah, the letters to the son, or the letters to your disciples is also what it's called. So letters to a disciple. So it has 24 counsels. Each and every single one of those counsels is an absolute gem. If you live your life through Ayyuh al-Walad, you wouldn't need anything else. So it's a basic introduction into Islamic Sufism, a very small introduction into Islamic Sufism, and it's let's say also basic, let's say, nasiya in how a Muslim is supposed to live his life. So I'll just read out one of this. So let's see, a small one, because wait. Yep. So referral. So the reminder of your questions have either been answered in my books. Okay, no. I'm trying to find a good one. Yeah, obedience. So my dear son, the essence of knowledge is to know what obedience and worship are. You should know that obedience and worship is to conform to the law in the commands and prohibitions in word and deed. This means that what you say, do, and forsake should be according to the Sharia. Thus, fasting on the day of Eid and the 3 appointed days of pilgrimage is a sin. And if you pray in a usurped garment, this too is a sin, although it appears to be a form of worship. So, meaning what he's saying over here is that even though he just says it in like 8 lines, point is that the purpose of knowledge is to conform to the divine law, is to conform to the Sharia in deed and in meaning. So, inwardly and in deed. And so, therefore, even though to worship is an act of supposed goodness, but if you do it with a stolen garment, you're sinning, even though it appears to be an act of worship, right? So, similarly, if you do a fast on the day of Eid, even though it seems to be an act of piety, it is against piety because it is not in conformity with the divine law. It is not in conformity with the lawgiver. And so, even though it appears to be an act of goodness, it's not an act of goodness. It's an act of evil because it's a sin, right? Sin is an evil. It can be minor, major, but it is an evil nonetheless. So, it's a very good book. It has Nasiya like that all throughout. Acquiring knowledge. Oh yes, the Imam actually believes that. He actually I'll read you my favorite part from the entire book, right? And for the people who are joining, so it's Ayyuhal Walad. So my favorite part of the entire book is this one point that he has to make about knowledge. And I would say that you can live your life by this point, and it will save you on the day of judgment. That is my view. So there can be obviously other things that save you on the day of judgment, but I personally believe that this one point, this one little thing, if you can internalize it, it will save you on the day of judgment, inshallah. Let me just find it because I know the quote, but I don't want to like misquote him. Just give me a moment. I'll find it. So most of this is actually talking about how a person is supposed to deal with knowledge. So how does a person deal with knowledge is the main crux of the entire book. So I'm sorry for taking your time, but I really do want to find it. Okay, find it. This is actually also pretty good. It's regarding action. Yep, here it is. So it's the 6th counsel. It's regarding intention. So Imam al-Ghazali says over here, my dear son, how many nights you have remained awake seeking knowledge and reading books, prohibiting yourself the pleasure of sleep. I do not know for what purpose you do this. If it was for attaining worldly benefits and securing its vanities, its status and position, and exerting your superiority over your peers and brothers, then vow to you and vow again. But if your purpose was to revive the Sharia of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to train your character and to break your nafs al-amara, then blessed are you and again blessed. The poet spoke truly when he said, to spend the night awake and weeping for others, then Allah is a foolish waste. So meaning that what's the intention you have for seeking knowledge? Is it that you can show others, or look, I have a lot of knowledge, I have a lot of books behind me, I know a lot of stuff? Then your knowledge is foul. It actually leads you into hellfire. There's nothing good about it because it's the object, it's the thing that makes you proud, right? And as we talked about in the stream earlier, that pride is something that only befits God. So if your knowledge is seeking to admire yourself, it's seeking to be prideful, then this knowledge is useless. It is actually against you. On the day of judgment, this knowledge will lead you into hellfire. It will not do any benefits for you. But if let's say you do not have knowledge, but the little that you know, the only thing that you do with it is that you try to revive the Sharia of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that little amount of knowledge will take you into Firdaus. So it's regarding your intention. What exactly do you want? Do you want to please God? Do you want to love God? Do you want to love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Then little knowledge suffices you, and Allah will give you knowledge where it is required. But if your reason for seeking knowledge is that you can try to show up individuals how perfect you are, how great you are, how much things you understand, then vow on this knowledge, like lana on this knowledge, as it's like cursed is this knowledge. So it's an amazing book that you should read. And after that, actually, you should read Bidayatul Hidayah. It's called The Beginning of Guidance. Yes. No, Bidayatul Hidayah is the beginning of guidance, right? Yeah. Yeah, Beginning of Guidance. So you should read Bidayatul Hidayah. So that's the next book you should read. And then after that, these two books that I'm covering, they are great, like for a medium level of Imam al-Ghazali. So now I'll answer Arabic directly, understand and internalize. I know some Arabic, so I'm not really good at Arabic, but I know enough. So I know enough, meaning that if I have some doubt about the English text, I can check up on the Arabic. So I know enough Arabic to make sure that the text is accurate. So, but I need to work on my Arabic, to be frank. So now regarding how do I control my nafs? So the way to control your nafs is to realize what exactly is your temptation. So let's say you're tempted by pride. So pride is actually a temptation, right? So you want to be better than others. Let's say, actually, let's forget about pride. Let's take something very basic like gluttony. So let's say you really want to eat a lot, right? You love eating a lot, you love stuffing yourself. And so the best way for you to deal with this is firstly to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded you against excess. But if that doesn't do it for you, then you have to force yourself. So the best thing to do is just simply not eat. So one of the things that the Sufis do is that if there's a person who loves wealth, right? So he loves status, he loves wealth. So the thing that they did with him was that if his love was related to material things, they would take everything he has and give it away in charity. So he realizes that he doesn't end without this, right? And that giving it away is not really something that defines him. It's not really something that changes him, because wealth is something that is external to you, right? So all of these books behind me, they are my wealth in a sense that, you know, I possess them, I own them, right? And let's say I like them, but they are other than me. So this book is not me, right? Anything that is contained in it, for example, of perfection, let's say there is something of perfection in it. It's not a perfection that is in me, right? So it is external to me. It's not my inner quality. It has nothing to do with my inner being. So how can I be prideful for something that has nothing to do with my inner being, that has nothing to do with my qualities? So it's ignorance to be prideful over wealth, because wealth is external to you. Now, prideful over inner qualities is something that is more dangerous, because now you're being prideful over what you perceive as your own inner qualities. So people who were prideful and who, let's say, had a lot of self-admiration for their qualities, let's say it may be that they are beautiful, it may be that they are knowledgeable, it may be that they have some other qualities, right? So the best thing that the Sufi used to do is that they used to make them beg, actually. So let's say in your mohalla or in your neighborhood, you are perceived as a person of great worth. So what the Sufis would do is that they would make you beg in that very neighborhood, right? To lower you, to humble you. Because the actual thing is that your heart needs to improve. So with charity, the point is that you give with your hand as much as you can and as often as you can until it becomes habitual for you. It becomes a habit and it doesn't feel bad. It's no longer difficult. That is the ultimate cure. That you keep practicing the good act until it becomes habitual and until you take pleasure in it. So that's the way that you ultimately get rid of. But there are more drastic measures if your situation is, let's say, more drastic. And this can be applied to like everything. So it's a basic wisdom. It can be applied to everything, right? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So any other questions, guys? Inshallah. If you have any other questions, Bismillah. I should actually display the questions. The question that I was answering, firstly, was the brother's question on which book of Imam Ghazali to read, and then the question on how to control nafs, right? So another thing with nafs is that one thing that Imam al-Ghazali recommends, he recommends this in his book on remembering death. And actually, I think it's called Challenging the Nafs. It's in Arba'in, yeah, it's in Arba'in fi Suruddin. So he has like a small chapter on challenging the ego. So what he does is that he tells you to remind yourself of what you are every single day. So it can be done in front of a mirror. It can be done after Fajr prayer. So the main aim is to remind yourself of your baseness, which means that your insignificance. It is to remind yourself of the akhirah. So one of the things that Imam says, and which I completely agree with, is that most people do sins. Most people do sins and all of these different things because they do not really believe in the akhirah. They do not really believe in judgment. They say it by their tongues, yeah, that, I believe that on the day of judgment this will occur or that will occur. I will be presented before Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me paradise, and all of these beautiful words. But does a person who really believes in eternal hellfire and eternal paradise act the way he does? Is that really possible? So meaning it's a hypocritical, not really hypocrisy, but it's more so of a belief that is either not eternalized or is either only lip service. So meaning he has doubts about the akhirah. So since he has doubts about the akhirah, then what he does is he says, you know what, I'll prepare a bit for it. So I'll prepare some good deeds. So meaning that if the akhirah does indeed exist and it does come, then I would have something to show for it. But since I do have doubt in my mind that there is such a thing as the akhirah, then I'm going to do sins as well. So meaning that I don't miss out on life. So that's how I believe and how the Imam believes that most people are. It's not to say that I'm free of this, but that most of individuals' sins and most of their filth, inner filth, like qualities, pride, envy, and all of these things, most of these things are over there because a person truly has doubts about the akhirah, about the day of judgment. If he didn't have doubts, if he really believed that there will be judgment, if he really believed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching over him at every single moment in time, if he really believed that if he was a person of corruption, then on the day of judgment he will go to hellfire, how is it possible or conceivable that such a person would do sins? Right? It's impossible. But since people have doubt, so they do sins. The best thing to do is remind yourself of the akhirah a lot. So remind yourself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment is swift. So the fear over here is to make you do good deeds. So for some people, fear doesn't work, right? So what they do is that they remind themselves of the rewards. So there are three ranks actually on this. So since we are on the topic, so the lowest rank is for a person to fear punishment and obey Allah for that. So a person fears that on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to throw him in hell. So he obeys Allah so that he doesn't throw him in hell. This is the lowest form of obedience. This is the lowest form of marifa of God, of knowing God. Because you're not really doing it for God, right? You don't even perhaps not even love God, right? So it's possible for a person to be afraid of someone and not love them, right? It is possible for a person to obey someone without loving them. So you can take the example of, let's say, a teacher. The teacher tells you, if you do not do this assignment, I'm gonna give you an F on a grade. So out of fear of getting an F, you do the assignment, not because you love the assignment, not because you have any praise for the teacher. So this is why this is the lowest form of obedience of God, that you're only doing it to avoid hellfire, right? The higher station is for a person to do it for paradise. So instead of doing it out of fear of hellfire, he does an act because he wants rewards from God. So since a person, so the reason this is better is because a person realizes that all good things come from God. This is the reason that it's better. So he realizes that God possesses all good things, and so therefore I should ask from him. So he relies solely upon God, because it is possible for a person in the lower station, in a station in which he only obeys God due to fear of hellfire, to not realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all good, right? So it is possible for you to fear getting an F and not realizing that the teacher can reward you an A. That's possible. And so therefore the second station is higher, because it realizes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the giver of all perfection. He is the giver of all goods, and he has the best of treasuries, right? So it's a higher station. But it's not the best station. It is still a selfish, let's say, obedience of God. The selfish obedience reasoning being that you don't really love God when you're doing it for good deed, doing it for paradise. So imagine my father says that if you do a good deed, let's say if you clean the house, I'm going to give you a car, right? And I clean the house. Did I do it for the car, or did I do it because my father commanded it? So if my father had not been giving me the car, would I have done it? And that's the question. So for such an individual, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not giving him, let's say, paradise for doing good deeds, would he do those good deeds? Probably not, right? And so therefore he's not doing it for God. He's doing it for paradise, right? So he's doing it for rewards. So that's a lower station. The highest station that mankind can reach is to do something for the sake of God. This is why the Sufi says that I don't care about hellfire. I don't care about paradise. So I don't care about any of those things. because I'm doing this for you, meaning for God. Now, ultimately, we do it for ourselves because we love God and we want to attain Him. So it is a selfish pursuit at the end of the day, but it is the highest form of realization of God, because you know that God deserves obedience simply because He is God, and He deserves love simply because He's the only object of love, right? And so, therefore, you must love Him and you must obey Him, irrelevant of if you get hellfire or paradise. And so that's the highest station of obedience. Hopefully, I didn't go on a completely different tangent. So, anyways, if you guys have any questions, we can continue this. And so this is like also the explanation of why the Sufis say, I don't care about hellfire, I don't care about paradise. So I do not want hellfire, I do not want your paradise. So the meaning is not that the Sufi doesn't realize that paradise connotes God's pleasure. Of course he does. But the point is that paradise in of itself is not an end. The end is God. So if you really love God, you want Him. And if loving Him means that you won't get paradise, then so be it. That's the point. How would you respond to secular low-key armchair critics of Imam al-Ghazali anti-science? So the Imam critiques were part of a larger theological critique. So I've actually done a documentary on this. So you can watch that documentary. So the documentary is on, believe it's called Al-Ghazali and the Intellectual Decline Narrative. Truth about Al-Ghazali and the intellectual decline narrative. So this idea that Imam al-Ghazali somehow led to an intellectual decline of Islam is nonsense. It is completely and utterly refuted in academia. So just to give you some names, Peter Adamson dismisses it, who is like one of the leading scholars on Islamic philosophy. Frank Griffel rejects it, who is one of the best, not the best, one of the most famous and accepted scholars on Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. George Saliba rejects it, who is similarly one of the best historians of Islamic history that we have. And all of these are Western academics. Obviously, Muslims reject it, so that's why I'm giving you Western academics. Then you have Ahmad Dalal, who rejects it. M. Marmora rejects it. So one of the books that I will actually recommend you on this should be over here somewhere. I just actually got it recently. Okay, where is the book? Now, this is the problem when you get so many books, but you don't know where you put them. Okay. Yep, here it is. Here it is. Found it. So, this is an amazing book to read on this part. It is Islamic Science and the Making of the European Renaissance by George Saliba. So, Saliba, in essence, completely and utterly rejects any notion that Imam al-Ghazali led to any sort of decline. So, firstly, he rejects the notion that there is any intellectual decline in Islam to begin with. So the entire idea of the golden age, it is an idea that was manufactured by some of the early Orientalists because they wanted to find a conflict between tradition and reason as had existed in their own history. So between the church and reason. So they wanted to, so in essence, what the Orientalists did, and they still do to this day, is that they believe that all histories are like their history. So since there was a conflict between the church and reason in their history, then there must be a conflict between religion and reason in all histories, right? And so they tried to find this conflict in Islam. So they said the golden age was over there because there were secular people in X, Y, and Z. So this is completely and utterly rejected. So Saliba actually says that it's a European bias and it's a European, let's say, unjustified applying of its own history into Islamic history. There is no such thing as a disconnect between reason and religion in Islam. It never existed. And just to evidence, so George Saliba actually does this. So since I recommend the book, you should. And I actually give a lot of examples in the documentary I did because I did research for it, obviously. And in the book, George Saliba gives a lot of examples of this. So, for example, the best Muslim astronomical models were made much after Imam al-Ghazali, right? So the best Islamic medicine models were made much after Imam al-Ghazali. The best philosophical works in Islam were written after Imam al-Ghazali. So Peter Adamson actually has a book on this, which is called The Heirs of Avicenna, in which he obviously shows the heirs of Avicenna that continue to exist much after Imam al-Ghazali. So no one actually holds on to this nonsense anymore. It was an old Orientalist myth. And so just like many nonsenses, they used to say, so they used to believe that the Quran was a 9th century text. Can you believe that? And sometimes, and even after some of the carbon dating of the Quran came out, from the first 20 years of the Prophet ﷺ, some of them said that the carbon dating is wrong. So that's how like biased and racist they are. So I'll tell you actually one incident that Wael Halak tells. So since Wael Halak like champions, while being a Christian, he champions Islamic Caliphate, and he writes books against Western authors over here. He's a Western academic himself. So when one of the Orientalists, a woman, was told that, Wael Halak has written an article against you, she didn't respond by saying, well, he made a mistake over here, or he made a mistake over there. She said, well, he's an Arab. So that's the kind of people we are dealing with. So they are better now, but it's not something that's. But you can watch the documentary, inshallah, for a more, let's say, nuanced academic take. I go through many different authors over there. I give a lot of references for Islamic philosophy continuing to thrive, Islamic science continuing to thrive. And I've actually also done like a documentary on Ibn al-Haytham, which you can watch as well. And the funny thing is that most of the scientists were Ash'ari. So these theological ideas, these theological ideas that led to the decline of Islam, all of the scientists held them. Al-Biruni held them, Ibn Haytham held them, Ibn al-Nafis held them, Ibn Khaldun held them. Ibn Khaldun was an Ash'ari himself. He defends occasionalism throughout the book. So which scientists were these individuals, right, who who found a conflict between this and science? So the vast majority of scientists were Ash'ari, who held the same thing as Imam Ghazali. So Ibn Rushd has an entire, Ibn Khaldun has an entire chapter against the philosophers. And the accusation that he makes against the philosophers is that he says that the philosophers are anti-science. In the Muqaddimah, so who are anti-science? The Ash'aris. Well, here's one of the biggest, one of the most historically significant Muslim writers saying that the philosophers are anti-science. He actually literally says that it is impossible to do science under the philosophy worldview. So, I mean, who are we kidding? It's not only Ibn Khaldun, by the way. So Ibn al-Nafis, who was one of the greatest scientists in the Islamic tradition after Imam Ghazali, so 150 years after Imam al-Ghazali, he throughout his works argues that the philosophy pursued, so the philosophy pursued was Aristotelian. So Aristotelian physics was even rejected by Ibn Haytham. So but the philosopher continued to hold on to this rejected like myth of Aristotelian physics, that the stars do not change, the stars have the inner and outer, right? The stars are eternal spiritual objects, right? That do not begin, that do not change. So this is something that Ibn Rushd held. This is something that the philosopher held. So it's nonsense, obviously. But when Ibn al-Haytham disproved this, and many of the Ash'aris disproved this, who said that, this is not, who didn't accept it? Was it Ghazali? Did Ghazali reject this? No. Was it maybe Jurjani? Did Jurjani reject this? No. Was it Imam Razi? Did Razi reject this? Like these Ash'aris did? No. You know who rejected it? Ibn Rushd. Okay, why did Ibn Rushd reject it? Because it was against Aristotle. It was against Aristotelian physics, the science that were being discovered. So I covered all of the things that were against Aristotelian physics that were known back as long back as Ibn al-Haytham. I did an entire documentary on Ibn al-Haytham. The person who rejected this was Ibn Rushd because it went against Aristotle. So who was anti-science? Obviously, it was the philosophers. The Ash'aris were never anti-science. Frank Griffel actually argues this as well. So Frank Griffel has an interview online in which he says that Imam al-Ghazali's view on science is the most compatible with modern science. So that's not what I say. That's something that the leading scholar on Imam al-Ghazali says. Anyways, do you guys have any other questions? I'm sorry for going on a rant. New comment. Oh, my pleasure, brother. My pleasure. Pleasure. Jazakallah khair for joining. And inshallah, next week I'll do this as well. I was thinking that perhaps we can do like after I do a documentary. So the next documentary I'm going to work on is on Ibn Khaldun. So this is why I'm telling you these stuff about Ibn Khaldun. I didn't want to reveal it before the documentary, but since, anyways, so I'm going to do this documentary on Ibn Khaldun next. So what we can do perhaps is that after I do the documentary, it's probably gonna take a month, but after I do it, we can have like a live stream on Ibn Khaldun to discuss his ideas in, let's say, a bit more detail and a bit more openness, open-ended questions, open-ended discussions, inshallah. So we can do that as well. So, but if there are no more questions, then I will be taking my leave. I meant for this to be 30 minutes. It's gone on for more than an hour. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Inshallah, I'll answer them. If there is no questions, then we can move on. Simbham. Jazakallah khair, brother, for admiring me. I'm not someone you should admire. You should admire the ulama of this tradition in the past, the people of righteousness. I'm just a normal dude on YouTube live stream. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm bored, right? So nothing to admire. Okay, I guess that there are no more questions. So if there are no more, I'm gonna give you guys about like 30 seconds. If you have any questions, you can ask them, or I'm gonna end this. So the counter begins right now. Okay, I'm just kidding. So next we are gonna cover, inshallah, the chapter on fasting in Arba'in fi Suluddin, since Ramadan is about to start. So hopefully next week, will Ramadan have started by next week? What is it today? It's 12, right? So it's gonna be 13. So next week is gonna be 19 of February, right? For the next stream. So yeah, I believe that's gonna be the first or second fast, right? The first fast is on the 18th. So yes, so we're gonna be in Ramadan when we cover the chapter on fasting. Subhanallah. So yeah, the next time we're gonna cover the chapter of fasting. So beautiful chapter, by the way, in Arba'in fi Suluddin. So, but until then, I guess since you guys have no more questions, this is all I have for you today. Take care, stay faithful, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bye bye.